My name is Father Marcus Wellington. I'm 38 years old, and before I became a priest, I was heir to one of the largest commercial real estate empires on the East Coast. Yes, you heard that right, a millionaire priest. It's an unusual combination, I know. Most people assume priests come from humble backgrounds, driven to the church by poverty or lack of options. My story was different. I had everything: a trust fund worth $50 million, a penthouse in Manhattan, invitations to galas where champagne flowed like water and everyone knew my name. And I gave it all up. Not for noble reasons, at least not at first. I entered the priesthood at 28, running from a life that had become empty despite or perhaps because of all that wealth. My father had died suddenly, leaving me his empire. My fiancée had left me for my business partner. I discovered that money couldn't buy loyalty, love, or meaning. So I walked away, signed over my inheritance to my younger sister, entered seminary, and spent the next 10 years building a new life as a simple parish priest in Boston. Simple. That's what I kept telling myself my life was now. Until the night I found her at the train station. It was February 12th, the coldest night of the year. Boston was in the grip of a brutal winter storm, wind chills at -15, snow falling so thick you couldn't see 5 feet ahead. The Archdiocese had opened the church as an emergency warming shelter, and I'd spent the evening helping coordinate volunteers, setting up cots, serving hot soup to anyone who came through our doors. Around midnight, I decided to do one final walk around the neighborhood to make sure no one was left outside in the deadly cold. I bundled up in my heavy coat, though I kept my collar visible. Sometimes people trusted a priest more readily than a stranger. The streets were eerily empty, just howling wind and swirling snow. I was about to head back when I passed South Station, the main train terminal. It should have been closed at this hour, but I saw a figure huddled against the exterior wall, barely visible in the storm. A woman? She was sitting on the frozen ground, knees pulled to her chest, wearing nothing but scrubs and a thin jacket. No hat, no gloves, no proper winter gear. Her lips were blue, her whole body shaking violently. "Miss!" I rushed over, already pulling off my coat. "Miss, can you hear me?" She looked up at me with unfocused eyes. Her face was pale, almost gray, and I could see she was on the verge of hypothermia. The bus," she mumbled through chattering teeth. "Missed my bus. We need to get you inside right now." I wrapped my coat around her shoulders. "Can you stand?" She tried, but her legs buckled. Without hesitation, I scooped her up in my arms. She was lighter than I expected, and even through my layers of clothing, I could feel how dangerously cold she was. "Stay with me," I said, starting to walk as fast as I could through the snow. "What's your name?" "C'est Claire," she managed. "Claire, I'm Father Marcus. I'm taking you somewhere warm. Just hold on." The church was only 3 blocks away, but in that storm, carrying her, it felt like miles. I kept talking to her the whole way, trying to keep her conscious. "Tell me about yourself, Claire." "Where were you trying to go?" "Home. Double shift. At the hospital. So tired. You're a nurse?" A tiny nod against my chest. "Which hospital?" "Mass General, IQ. By the time I got her to the church, my arms were burning and I was gasping for breath. I kicked open the side door and called out for help. Sister Margaret, one of our volunteers, came running. Her eyes widened when she saw Claire's condition. "Sweet Jesus, how long was she out there?" "I don't know." "Get blankets, warm water, and call Dr. Patterson if he's still here. We had a retired doctor volunteering that night. Thank God." While Sister Margaret gathered supplies, I carried Claire to a private room we used for emergency cases, a small office with a space heater and a couch. I laid her down gently, and Sister Margaret brought an armful of blankets. We covered her, tucking them around her carefully. "Her fingers," Sister Margaret whispered, concerned. "Father, look." Claire's fingers were white and waxy frostbite. Her feet, too, visible through her thin canvas sneakers. Dr. Patterson arrived and immediately took over, checking her vitals, examining her extremities. His expression was grave. "She's hypothermic. Core temperature is probably dangerously low. We need to warm her gradually. Too fast and we could trigger cardiac arrest." He looked at me. "Father, I need you to stay with her. Keep her awake if possible. Keep talking to her. I'm going to prepare some warm fluids. So I sat beside the couch, holding Claire's hand, the one that looked less affected by frostbite, and I talked. I told her about the church, about the storm, about how brave she was. I asked her questions about her work, her life, anything to keep her engaged. Slowly, painfully slowly, color began returning to her face. Her shivering became less violent. Her eyes focused on mine with more clarity. You saved my life, she whispered after about an hour. I just happened to be walking by. No, her grip on my hand tightened slightly. You went out in a storm to look for people. That's not happening to be somewhere. That's choosing to care. Something in the way she said it made my chest tight. Over the next few hours, as Dr. Patterson monitored her recovery, I learned her story. Claire Morrison, 32 years old, ICU nurse at Mass General. She'd worked a double shift 16 hours straight because they were short-staffed during the storm. Exhausted, running on no sleep, she'd fallen asleep on the train and missed her stop. By the time she woke up, the trains had stopped running. She'd tried to catch a bus but had just missed the last one. Too tired and too cold to think clearly, she sat down to rest just for a minute, and that minute had nearly killed her. I have a little apartment in Dorchester, she explained, her voice still weak. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I was so close to home. Why didn't you call someone? A cab? A friend? She looked embarrassed. Phone died during my shift. And I don't really have people to call. I moved to Boston 6 months ago for this job. Haven't really made friends yet. Too busy working. The loneliness in her voice was familiar. I'd felt it myself in those first years after giving up my old life. Well, you're safe now. You'll stay here tonight, and tomorrow we'll make sure you get home safely. She studied my face for a long moment. You're very kind, Father. Thank you. It's what anyone would do. No, she said softly. It's what you did. By 4 a.m., Claire was stable enough to sleep. I left Sister Margaret watching over her and went to my small room in the rectory, but I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her face pale and frightened in the snow, then gradually warming back to life. Kept feeling the weight of her in my arms as I'd carried her to safety. Kept hearing her voice. You chose to care. I told myself it was natural to feel connected to someone you'd saved. That what I was feeling was simply pastoral concern for someone in need. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. Something had shifted in that moment when our eyes met. Something I hadn't felt in 10 years, since before I took my vows. And that terrified me. Claire stayed at the church shelter for 2 days while she recovered. Dr. Patterson said she'd been incredibly lucky, no permanent damage from the frostbite, though her fingers and toes would be sensitive to cold for months. But she needed rest, warmth, and monitoring to make sure no complications developed. I told myself I was just being thorough when I checked on her every few hours. Just being a good priest, ensuring a parishioner was well cared for. But the truth was, I looked for excuses to see her. I'd bring her meals personally instead of letting the volunteers do it. I'd sit with her while she ate, and we'd talk about everything and nothing. Her childhood in rural Maine, growing up in a family of 7 kids. My own privileged upbringing in Connecticut, the pressure of being a Wellington, the expectations I'd never quite met. You gave up $50 million to become a priest. She asked on the second day, her eyes wide. The money wasn't mine. It was my father's legacy, and I didn't earn it. It felt wrong to keep something I hadn't worked for when there were people struggling every day. So you gave it all away? To my sister? She's better equipped to handle it. Uses it for good things, scholarships, community programs, that sort of thing. Claire shook her head in amazement. Most people would have kept it. Built a bigger empire. Most people aren't trying to run from their past. Is that what you were doing? Running? I hesitated. No one had asked me that so directly before. Yes, I admitted. I was lost. My fiancée left me, my business partner betrayed me, my father died before we could resolve our differences. I had all this money and no idea who I was without it. The priesthood gave me purpose, structure, a way to serve something bigger than myself. Do you regret it? Never. Best decision I ever made. Even though it means being alone. The question hung in the air between us. being alone. That was the cost of the vows I'd taken. No family of my own, no romantic love, no intimate partnership. I'd accepted that trade gladly 10 years ago. So why did it suddenly feel like a higher price than I'd realized? I'm not alone, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I have my congregation, my fellow priests, my faith. That's not the same as having someone, Claire said softly, someone who's just yours, who sees you, not Father Marcus, but just Marcus. The way she said my name without the title sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with the cold. No, I admitted quietly. It's not the same. On the third day, Claire was well enough to go home. I arranged for a car service to take her. She tried to protest that she could take the train, but I'd insisted. Consider it part of your medical care, I said with a smile. She laughed. Do all priests have personal car services? No, but this one used to have a driver and still has some contacts. The car arrived mid-morning. I walked her out, carrying the bag of supplies Sister Margaret had put together, warm clothes, donated from our clothing drive, thermal socks, a proper winter coat. Thank you, Claire said, standing by the car door, for everything. You literally saved my life. I'm just glad I was there. She reached out and touched my arm. Father Marcus, can I come back? To visit, maybe volunteer or I don't know. I'd like to give back to the place that helped me. My heart leaped in a way it absolutely shouldn't have. Of course, we always need volunteers. And we have a soup kitchen on Thursdays if you're interested. I work Thursday days, but I could do evenings. Thursday evenings would be perfect. We stood there for a moment too long, her hand still on my arm, both of us reluctant to break the connection. Finally, she got in the car. But as it pulled away, she looked back through the window, and our eyes met one last time. I stood there long after the car disappeared, my arm still warm where she'd touched it. Thursday came faster than I expected. I told myself not to get my hopes up. She'd probably been polite, making an offer she didn't really mean to follow through on. People did that, sometimes promised to come back and then life got in the way. But at 6 p.m., just as we were setting up for the evening meal service, the door opened and there she was. Claire, looking healthy and vibrant in jeans and a sweater, her cheeks pink from the cold, carrying a bag of groceries. I wasn't sure what you needed, so I brought some basics, she said, a little nervously. Pasta, sauce, bread. Sister Margaret beamed. Bless you, child. We can always use more supplies. Claire helped in the kitchen that night, working alongside our regular volunteers to prepare and serve meals to the 60 or so people who came through. I watched her interact with our guests without being condescending, warm without being invasive. She had a natural way with people, probably from her years in nursing. After cleanup, when most volunteers had left, she lingered. Can I talk to you for a minute, Father Marcus? We went to the small garden behind the church, barely more than a courtyard with a few benches and some hardy evergreens that survived Boston winters. I wanted to thank you again, she began. And I wanted to explain why I really came back. You don't have to explain anything. I do, though, because I'm not just here to volunteer. She took a deep breath. I've been thinking about that night constantly, about how close I came to dying alone in the cold, about how empty my life has become, just work and sleep and more work. I don't have friends here, don't have family nearby, don't have anything that matters beyond my job. Claire, and then you appeared. This stranger who cared enough to go out in a deadly storm looking for people who might need help. And I thought, that's what I want. Not the being a priest part, but the caring part. The being connected to something bigger than myself part. She looked at me with those earnest eyes. I want to learn how to live like that. How to be less alone. And I thought maybe volunteering here, being part of this community, might teach me. My throat felt tight. I think that's a beautiful reason to be here. There's something else too. She stepped closer. I feel drawn to this place, to this community, she paused, then finished quietly, to you. The words hung in the cold air between us. Claire, I'm a priest. I know. And I'm not asking for anything inappropriate. I just wanted to be honest about why I keep coming back. Because pretending would be dishonest, And you deserve better than that. I should have created distance right then, should have gently but firmly established boundaries, should have reminded her and myself of my vows. Instead, I said, I'm drawn to you too. The admission fell from my lips before I could stop it. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night. And I know that's wrong. No, it violates everything I've committed to, but it's the truth. You asked for honesty, so there it is. Claire's eyes filled with tears. What do we do? I don't know. But I know that running from it or pretending it doesn't exist won't work. I've tried that for the past week and it's been torture. So we acknowledge it, and then what? We're careful. We maintain appropriate boundaries. You volunteer here, we work together in service of others, and we handle this like adults. With honesty and respect and restraint. Can we be friends at least? I wanted to say no. Wanted to tell her that friendship would be too dangerous, too likely to turn into something more. But looking at her hopeful face, I couldn't bring myself to close that door. Yes, we can be friends. She smiled, relieved. Good, because I really need a friend right now. And I think maybe you do too. She was right. I did. Over the next 2 months, Claire became a regular fixture at the church. She came every Thursday evening to help with the soup kitchen. Then she started coming on Sunday mornings for Mass. Then Tuesday afternoons for our community outreach program. We worked together, we talked, we carefully maintained appropriate boundaries while everyone else around us accepted her as another dedicated volunteer. But underneath that careful propriety, something was growing. It was in the way our hands would accidentally brush when reaching for the same serving spoon. In the way our conversations would stretch longer than necessary, both of us reluctant to say goodbye. In the way she'd catch my eye during Mass and smile, and I'd have to force myself to focus on the liturgy instead of that smile. We were falling for each other, slowly and inevitably, like snow accumulating on a winter night, each individual flake seeming insignificant, but together building into something that would change the entire landscape. And I had no idea how to stop it, or if I even wanted to. It was late March when everything came to a head. Claire had been volunteering at the church for 2 months, and in that time she'd become integral to our community. The homeless guests loved her. The other volunteers adored her. Sister Margaret had started calling her our angel, and I was completely, hopelessly in love with her. I hadn't said it out loud, hadn't even fully admitted it to myself, but every morning I woke up thinking about her. Every evening I went to bed remembering something she'd said, the way she'd laughed, the light in her eyes when she talked about a patient she'd helped save. I'd prayed for strength, for clarity, for the feelings to fade. They only grew stronger. One Tuesday afternoon I was in the church alone, polishing the brass candlesticks when I heard footsteps. Claire appeared from the side entrance, still in her scrubs from her morning shift. Hey, she said softly. I saw your car outside. Thought I'd stop by before heading home. You're always welcome. She walked down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the empty church. When she reached me, she didn't sit in a pew. She stood closer than appropriate. Marcus, we need to talk. The use of my name without the Father should have alarmed me. Instead, it felt intimate, right? About what? About this. About us. About what we're doing. We're not doing anything wrong. You volunteer. I serve my parish. Stop. Her voice was firm but not unkind. Stop pretending. Please. I set down the candlestick, my hands trembling slightly. What do you want me to say? The truth. Do you feel it? This thing between us? Yes. Do you think about me? Constantly. Do you wish things were different? That you weren't a priest and I wasn't just a volunteer and we could be something else? I closed my eyes, unable to look at her and lie. Yes. God help me. Yes. When I opened my eyes, tears were streaming down her face. I'm in love with you, she whispered. I've tried not to be. I've tried to just be your friend, your volunteer, someone who respects your vows and your calling, but I can't help it. I love you. The words I've been longing to hear and dreading in equal measure. Claire, I know you can't say it back. I know you can't do anything about it. But I needed you to know. Because I can't keep pretending anymore. It's killing me to be near you and have to act like you're just my priest, just some religious figure I admire from afar. She took a shaky breath. So I'm going to stop coming. I'm going to find somewhere else to volunteer, somewhere else to worship, somewhere where I do and have to see you every week and fall more in love with someone I can never have. Panic seized my chest. Don't. Please don't leave. I have to. For both our sakes. No. The word came out more forcefully than I intended. You can't leave. I need you here. Why? So we can keep torturing ourselves. So we can keep having these intense conversations and pretending they're just friendly chats. So we can keep looking at each other across the church and wishing things were different. Yes, because having you here, even if I can't have you the way I want, is better than not having you at all. The admission hung between us, raw and desperate. Claire stepped even closer. We were inches apart now, close enough that I could smell her shampoo, see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. What do you want, Marcus? If there were no vows, no church, no consequences, what would you want? You. I'd want you. Then take me. I can't. Why not? You're not happy. I can see it. This life you've built, it's noble and it's good. But it's not enough anymore. You know it isn't. It has to be enough. I made a commitment. To God or to running from yourself. The question hit like a physical blow. You told me you became a priest because you were lost, Claire continued. Because your life was empty and you needed purpose. But Marcus, I've seen you with our guests, with the volunteers, with me. You don't serve out of obligation. You serve out of genuine love for people. That's not something you learned in seminary. That's who you are. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe you don't need the priesthood to be that person. Maybe you could serve and care and love outside of these vows that are clearly making you miserable. I'm not miserable. Yes, you are. You're just good at hiding it. But I see you, Marcus, really see you. And I see someone who's trapped himself in a life that made sense 10 years ago, but doesn't fit who you are now. I wanted to argue. Wanted to defend my choices, my vocation, my vows. But she was right. Somewhere in the past 10 years, my calling had shifted from something I felt deeply to something I performed dutifully. I still believed in God, still wanted to serve, but the specific structure of priesthood had become more cage than calling. And it had taken falling in love with this woman to realize it. Even if you're right, I said quietly, leaving the priesthood isn't simple. There's a process, paperwork. It could take a year or more. And there's no guarantee that at the end of it, you'd still want to be with someone who gave up everything for you. I would wait. However long it takes. You say that now. I'd wait, she interrupted firmly. Because what we have is worth waiting for. And because I believe in you, not Father Marcus, but Marcus Wellington, the man who went out in a blizzard to save strangers, the man who gave away millions to serve others, the man who sees me for who I really am. I reached up and cupped her face with my hand. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing. If I do this, I whispered, if I leave the priesthood for you, there's no going back. My family will be disappointed. The church will be disappointed. Some people will say I was never truly called in the first place. And what do you say? I say that maybe I was called to the priesthood to learn how to serve with humility. And maybe now I'm being called to something else. Someone else. Her eyes opened, filled with hope. I can't promise this will be easy, I continued. The process of laicization is complicated. We'll have to keep our relationship private until it's finalized. We'll face judgment from people who don't understand. I don't care about easy. I care about real, about honest, about being with someone who actually sees me and chooses me anyway. Then I choose you. I kissed her then, there in the empty church where I'd served for 10 years. It wasn't my first kiss. I'd had a life before the priesthood, but it felt like the first kiss that mattered. The first one that was leading somewhere real. When we pulled apart, both breathless, Claire was smiling through her tears. What happens now? Now I talk to my bishop. I start the formal process. It'll take time, maybe a year or 18 months. Can you really wait that long? I found you freezing in a snowstorm and you brought me back to life. I can wait. The process of leaving the priesthood was harder than I'd expected. Not emotionally, I was certain about my decision, felt more peace about it than I'd felt about anything in years. But logistically, it was a nightmare of paperwork, interviews, and bureaucratic waiting. I had to petition Rome for laicization, had to meet with church officials who questioned my calling, my commitment, my reasons for leaving. Had to endure the disappointment in my bishop's eyes when I explained that I'd fallen in love and could uncontinue in ordained ministry. Father Marcus, Bishop O'Brien said during one particularly difficult meeting, "I've known you for 10 years. You're one of our best priests. Are you certain this woman is worth giving all that up? With respect, Your Excellency, I'm not giving anything up. I'm stepping into who I'm meant to be." He sighed heavily. "I'll support your petition, but I want you to know what you're walking away from. The respect, the community, the structure of religious life, it sustains us in ways we don't always recognize until it's gone. I understand. But I've prayed about this more than I've prayed about anything. And every time the answer is the same. This is right." Meanwhile, Claire and I navigated the complicated space of being together but not really together. We couldn't be public about our relationship, not while I was still technically a priest, so we were careful, discreet. She'd stopped volunteering at the church to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Instead, we'd meet at out-of-the-way coffee shops, take walks in parks where no one knew us, spend hours talking in a small apartment while I was on personal leave from my parish duties. Those months were a strange mix of joy and frustration. Joy because we could finally be honest about our feelings, could hold hands and kiss and talk about the future. Frustration because we still couldn't be fully together, couldn't move forward with our lives until Rome processed my petition. "Tell me again why the Catholic Church needs 18 months to decide if you can leave," Claire said one evening as we sat in her living room, carefully maintaining space between us on her couch. "Because they want to make sure it's not a rash decision, that I'm not running from something temporary. You've been certain from day one, I know. But they've seen priests have crises before and regret leaving. They're trying to protect both me and the church. Or they're stalling, hoping you'll change your mind. Maybe a little of that too." She leaned her head on my shoulder, one of the few physical intimacies we allowed ourselves. "I hate this waiting." "Me too, but it won't be forever. Promise?" "Promise." During those months, I had a lot of time to think about my life, my choices, who I'd been, and who I was becoming. I'd entered the priesthood running from pain and searching for purpose. I'd found both within the structure of religious life. The vows had given me boundaries when I was flailing. The community had given me belonging when I was alone. The service had given me meaning when everything felt empty. But somewhere along the way, the scaffolding I'd built to support myself had become the structure itself. I'd confused the tools with the calling. I still believed in God, still wanted to serve others, still found profound meaning in prayer and compassion. But I'd realized I didn't need to be a priest to do those things. And more importantly, I'd realized that denying myself human love in the name of divine service wasn't noble. It was just another way of running. I'd spent 10 years hiding from the possibility of being hurt again, from the vulnerability of loving someone who could leave, from the risk of opening my heart to rejection. Claire had broken through all of that. Not by being perfect or by making it easy, but by being honest, by seeing both who I was and who I was pretending to be and loving both. "I don't need you to be holy," she told me once. "I just need you to be real." That became my new calling. Not to be Father Marcus, respected and admired, but ultimately unknowable. But to be Marcus, flawed and uncertain, but trying his best. The approval from Rome came 14 months after I'd filed my petition. I was sitting in the diocesan office when Bishop O'Brien handed me the letter. My hands shook as I opened it. The Holy See had granted my petition for laicization. As of that moment, I was no longer bound by my vows. I was free to marry, to pursue a secular life, to step away from ordained ministry. "Congratulations, Mr. Wellington," the bishop said. There was sadness in his voice, but also a grudging respect. "You're officially a layman again, Mr. Wellington, not Father Marcus." Just Marcus? It should have felt like loss. Instead, it felt like coming home. I called Claire from the parking lot. She answered on the first ring. "It came through," I said, my voice breaking with emotion. "I'm free." I heard her sob on the other end of the line. "Really?" Really, no more waiting, no more hiding, just us. Where are you? The assistant office. Stay there. I'm coming to you. She broke every traffic law getting there, arriving in less than 20 minutes. When she got out of her car, I was standing there waiting, no longer wearing my collar, just jeans and a regular shirt. She ran to me and I caught her, lifting her off the ground as she wrapped her arms around my neck. It's over, she breathed into my ear. We made it. We made it. We stood there in the parking lot, holding each other, both of us crying with relief and joy and the sheer overwhelming reality that we could finally be together. Marry me, I said. She pulled back to look at me. What? Marry me. I know this is fast. I know we technically just started officially dating about 5 minutes ago, but I've been in love with you for over a year. I've spent 40 months waiting to be able to ask you this. So I'm asking now. Marry me, Claire. We don't have a ring. We're in a parking lot. This is possibly the least romantic proposal ever. I don't care. I've had enough grand gestures and formal procedures for a lifetime. I just want you. Will you marry me? She laughed through her tears. Yes, obviously yes. I kissed her then, properly, publicly for the first time. Not hidden away in her apartment or my car, but right there in broad daylight, two people in love with nothing to hide anymore. When we finally broke apart, she was grinning. So what now? Now, I grinned back. Now we go ring shopping. And then we start planning a life together. A real one, not the waiting room version we've been living in. What about your family? Your sister? I'll call them tonight. Tell them everything. They might be surprised, but they'll be happy. My sister especially, she has been telling me for years that the priesthood was just my way of hiding from life. Smart woman. Runs in the family. We got in my car and drove to the jeweler. Still holding hands, still hardly believing this was real. We were married in a small ceremony at a non-denominational chapel, officiated by a justice of the peace. My sister attended, along with a handful of close friends. Claire's family came down from Maine, all 6 of her siblings, her parents, even her elderly grandmother who declared that Claire had finally found someone worthy. It wasn't the grand cathedral wedding I might have had in my old life before the priesthood. But it was perfect. Simple, honest, focused on what mattered. 2 people committing to build a life together. Do you, Marcus Wellington, take Claire Morrison to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. And do you, Claire Morrison, take Marcus Wellington to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. Then by the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. I kissed her, this woman who'd changed everything, and felt more blessed than I ever had while ordained. We honeymooned in Maine, at a cabin on a lake that had belonged to Claire's family for generations. No servants, no luxury, no wealth, just us, some books, good food, and the quiet of nature. One evening we were sitting on the dock watching the sunset when Claire asked, "Do you miss it, the priesthood?" I thought about it honestly. I miss some aspects. I miss the rhythm of the liturgy, the sense of being part of something ancient and enduring. I miss some of the people. Sister Margaret sent me the most beautiful note when she heard about our wedding. But I don't miss the loneliness. I don't miss feeling like I was performing a role instead of living a life. I don't miss watching couples like us and wondering what that felt like. I pulled her closer. Now I know. And it's better than anything I gave up. What about the money? Your inheritance? What about it? Don't you ever wish you'd kept it? We're living in a tiny apartment. You're working as a counselor, making 1/10 of what you could. I'm still doing night shifts at the hospital. We're scraping by while your sister has millions. I kissed the top of her head. The money never made.